So when a pet store patron walks into the pet store, they go back to the aquatic section. They're thinking about adopting a little amphibian friend. However, many believe that they are adopting one or more little African dwarf frogs, and these African dwarf frogs are called a dwarf frog because of their size. They're very small. However, when an African clawed frog and an African dwarf frog are in their young stages, they look very similar. So today I'm going to explore some facts and figures that will help you distinguish between the African clawed frog and the African dwarf frog. Please stay tuned for more. So one of the things that I've read about online and has actually happened to a family member of mine is that people will go into the pet store and buy a group of frogs. These frogs they believe will be the African clawed frog or the African dwarf frog. Sometimes they get mistaken for one another, and those have dire consequences. Now, before I get into some of the facts, I just want to address something I said a moment ago. One of my family members, when they originally adopted Sir Froggy, they adopted this frog with the idea that they also adopted a second frog and a snail. There were going to be a pair of African dwarf frogs. However, obviously, as can be seen by the frog to my left, that is Sir Froggy. Sir Froggy is not an African dwarf frog. The African dwarf frog wound up actually being eaten by Sir Froggy as a result of a lack of available food, because the food requirements are much different between the African clawed frog and the African dwarf frog. The African clawed frog requires a larger amount of food due to the larger muscle mass involved in the motion that the frog uses to swim back and forth between the surface and the floor of the environment in which the frog is living. Uh, Make sure that you have the frog that you believe that you have. Make sure that when you actually look to identify this frog, that you are keeping it in the right size tank. An African clawed frog requires a 20-gallon tank minimum. Meanwhile, an African dwarf frog, maybe you can get away with a 10-gallon tank. While I have not yet adopted an African dwarf frog, I do have an African clawed frog. He is one of the single best friends I've ever had in my life. But for right now, I'm going to address the African dwarf frog. So I do have plans to get a few of these little guys. If you'll notice, the African dwarf frog has a much smaller body than what I'll show you on the next slide as my African clawed frog. In addition, the eyes are on the side of the head. Now, it may look kind of from this photograph, which was borrowed from a website. It's not my frog. This was borrowed from dreamtime.com. So if you'll notice, the actual eyes look kind of like they're on the top of the head, but there's sort of a slant to the head, which gives them the appearance that is on the side of the head. Another thing that you'll notice about the African dwarf frog is that they have webbed front hands and webbed back feet. Now, that's important because the African clawed frog does not have webbed front hands. Now, this big, beautiful frog in the video to my left, this is my frog, Sir Froggy. He is a Xenopus Laevis African clawed frog. One of the big distinguishing features about the African clawed frog is that it has 4 fingers on each front hand, and those fingers are not webbed. They look like human digits in a way, as if these 4 fingers were on the front leg. You can see that in the video. Now, the back legs are much larger and much stronger. However, I have not seen any evidence that the African clawed frog is actually aggressive. Um, I have seen that the frog uses its hind legs more to balance, and will actually comb through the plants with their hind legs to clean off any algae. Now, Sir Froggy also does get along with my betta fish Salazar salamander. Their tanks are right next to each other. They are able to see each other and interact. Please check out my Instagram at the Fish Keeping Teachers, and you can see some videos of them interacting. Um, if so, currently this concludes this video. Thank you very much for watching. I will continue to update these videos in this series as I get more information. Um, Initially, it kind of seemed like there wasn't that much information, but then I found a wealth of information on the African clawed frog, but much of it contradicts, and that will be the topic of my next video. So thank you for watching, and please stay tuned for that next video. Please don't forget to click like and subscribe, and have a great and awesome week.